It started with a worn leather briefcase, cracked, faded, and scarred by time. The kind of thing you'd find buried in the back of an attic, forgotten for decades. But for me, Dexter Holbrook, that briefcase became the key to unraveling everything I thought I knew about my father and about the legacy he left behind. The day it all began, the mahogany-paneled office of Harland and Associates still smelled like his cigars. Thick, earthy, the scent of a man who never believed in half measures. Raymond Holbrook had been gone for 2 weeks, but somehow he was still there. His presence clung to the air, to the wood, to the silence between words. And in that silence, my brother was celebrating. Sterling Holbrook, polished, confident, born with that effortless arrogance that always seemed to fit him, like one of his tailored Italian suits, stood at the center of the room, grinning like a man who'd just been crowned king. $50 million, he said, waving the estate documents like they were holy scripture. The entire Holbrook hospitality empire, 17 hotels, the Lake Forest mansion, the car collection, it's all mine. He popped open a bottle of champagne he'd brought himself, the cork slamming into the ceiling and leaving a small dent in the white paint. Uncle Harland winced but said nothing. That was Sterling, for you. Celebrating before the ink was even dry, claiming victory before the game was done. He looked exactly like our father had at that age. Sharp jawline, steel gray eyes, and a kind of presence that made people straighten their backs when he walked into a room. That's not entirely accurate, Uncle Harland said finally, adjusting his glasses. He was 70 now, my father's younger brother and the family's lawyer for over 4 decades. There's something for Dexter as well. Sterling's laughter filled the room. Oh, right, he said, pouring champagne into a coffee mug. Let me guess, Dad left you his old golf clubs, or maybe that hideous painting from the library? But then, Harland reached beneath his desk and pulled out the briefcase. It was brown leather, but time had turned it the color of old dirt. One of the brass corners was green with tarnish. The handle was cracked, repaired with duct tape, and one of the locks hung crooked, like it had been forced open years ago and never fixed. Your father wanted you to have this, Harland said, pushing it toward me. The room went still. Sterling blinked. Then he started laughing so hard he nearly spilled his drink. You've got to be kidding me, he said, wiping tears from his eyes. That thing? That's Dad's first briefcase from when he was selling insurance door to door in the 70s. He used to keep it in the library like some kind of trophy. He looked at me like he was delivering the punchline of a joke. Guess Dad figured you should start where he did. 40 years too late. I didn't say a word. I just picked it up. It was lighter than I expected, almost empty. The leather was dry and rough beneath my fingers, the kind of texture that carried stories, years of sweat and sun and rain. There was a dark stain on the side that could have been coffee or something else. The latches wouldn't move. Locked or jammed, I couldn't tell. Hey, Sterling said, smirking, maybe there's a list of his old insurance clients in there. You could cold call them, see if they need coverage. Sterling, that's enough, Uncle Harland said, but without much force. Come on, Uncle, Sterling laughed. Even you have to admit this is classic Dad. Dexter spends his life playing with test tubes, and Dad leaves him a reminder of what real work looks like. On the laptop screen, my mother was watching from Florida, calm, unreadable, the way she'd always been. She didn't flinch, didn't smile, didn't say a word until Harland asked if she had anything to add. Raymond always had his reasons, she said softly. Then the screen went black. Just like that. Gone. Sterling stood, buttoning his suit jacket. Well, little brother, he said, if you ever need a job, I'm sure I can find something for you at one of the hotels. Bell service, maybe? You're good with helping people, right? That's what teachers do. He clapped me on the shoulder and left, already calling someone. Probably Miranda, his perfect wife from the Ashworth Hotel dynasty. And there I was, standing in that office with a bottle of champagne still 3/4 full and a briefcase that felt heavier than its weight should allow. Uncle Harland was still watching me, but the look he gave me wasn't pity. It wasn't sympathy. It was something else. Anticipation. The reading of Raymond Holbrook's will should have been simple. My father had built his empire from the ground up. One motel in 1975 turned into 17 luxury hotels across the Midwest, each one a monument to his favorite saying, Hospitality isn't about rooms, it's about belonging. Sterling had been by his side the entire way. Vice President of Operations, the heir apparent. He married Miranda from another hotel family, and Dad called them a dynasty of hospitality. Even their twin daughters, Madison and Mackenzie, were already planning to attend Cornell's hotel management program. Me? I took a different road. High school chemistry teacher. Lincoln High. $48,000 a year before taxes. A one-bedroom apartment and a 15-year-old Honda. But I loved it. Watching a kid's eyes light up when they finally understood a chemical reaction, that was my kind of empire. Dad never understood that. He'd say it every Christmas, every birthday, every family dinner. You're wasting your potential, Dexter. Your brother builds empires. You build nothing. The last time I saw him alive, 3 months before his death, Sterling had rented out a hotel ballroom for his 71st birthday. 200 guests, a 12-piece band. I showed up late, still wearing my work clothes after helping a student with their science fair project. Dad had looked at me across the room, surrounded by senators and CEOs, and just shook his head. That look, disappointment, wrapped in pride he couldn't quite fake, stayed with me. Now, 2 weeks after his funeral, I sat alone in my apartment, staring at the briefcase on my kitchen table. The light flickered above me, casting long shadows across the cracked leather. Sterling had texted me 17 times since the will reading. Photos of the mansion, videos of the Bentley, even a selfie in Dad's study holding a glass of vintage scotch. His last message, "Don't worry, little brother. If teaching doesn't work out, I'll hire you as a bellhop. Starting salary and everything." I poured myself a cheap bourbon, the kind that burns on the way down, and stared at that briefcase like it was mocking me. Was this it? Was this all I was worth? A relic from a life I'd never lived? I ran my fingers over the latches again. They didn't budge. I could have forced it open, grabbed a hammer, and shattered the damn thing, but something stopped me. Maybe it was the way Harland had looked at me. Maybe it was the flash in my mother's eyes, the one that looked suspiciously like fear. Whatever it was, I waited. At midnight, I called Jasmine Walker, my colleague in the shop class. We'd been friends for years, bonded over budget cuts and bad coffee. "Dex, it's midnight," she answered groggily. "You okay?" "I need a favor," I said. "Can you help me open something without destroying it?" There was a pause. "Now you've got me curious," she said. "Bring it by tomorrow. I'll be in early." I didn't sleep that night. Instead, I sat at my computer researching my father's early years, his insurance days, the ones he never talked about. According to old business records, he'd worked for Midwestern Life Assurance, a small firm out of Peoria, Illinois. Door-to-door salesman, commission only. He'd left in 1976, the same year he bought his first motel, but there were no photos from that time, no letters, no records of clients, like those years had been scrubbed clean. And then I noticed something strange. The company went bankrupt in 1976, months after Dad quit. The firm's CEO? Leonard T. Ashworth, Miranda's grandfather, Sterling's father-in-law. That couldn't be a coincidence. Could it? The next morning, I brought the briefcase to Jasmine's workshop. She raised an eyebrow when she saw it. "That thing looks like it's been through a war." "Feels like it too," I said. She examined the locks, running her fingers over the metal. "Old combination system. Probably jammed from rust. We can heat the hinges to loosen them, but if there's paper inside, we risk damage." I hesitated. "Do it carefully. If this burns, I'll never hear the end of it." She smiled. "From who?" I didn't have an answer. While the heat gun hummed, I couldn't stop thinking about the look on Harlan's face. That subtle shift in his eyes, like he knew something I didn't. Like this wasn't just some sentimental heirloom. When Jasmine turned off the heat and pried the first latch open, it snapped loudly, echoing through the empty shop. The sound made my pulse quicken. She worked the second latch free with a screwdriver and nodded. "It's ready." I took a deep breath and lifted the lid. For a moment, I thought it was empty, just an old briefcase and my father's cruel sense of humor. But then, in the bottom corner, wedged into the lining, I saw something glint. A key. Small. Brass. Attached to a worn leather tag with a hotel logo I didn't recognize. It wasn't one of ours. And tucked beneath it, a single envelope, yellowed with age. My name written on the front in my father's handwriting. Dexter. My hands shook as I tore it open. Inside was a letter. Just a few lines, written in the familiar, forceful script of Raymond Holbrook. Open quote. If you're reading this, it means you finally decided to stop running from who you are. The briefcase holds the key to the first hotel I ever owned, but it's not what you think. Go to the place where the sign first burned out. Ask for room 19. Dad. Close quote. I read it again and again. The sign first burned out. Room 19. That meant the Holbrook Inn, the original motel he'd bought in 1976, the one he'd sold decades ago after the fire. But if he sold it, what was left there now? And why was this letter waiting for me? Locked away for 40 years. As I stood there staring at that letter, something in me shifted. For the first time in my life, I wasn't thinking about what my father had taken from me. I was thinking about what he'd hidden. Because if there's one thing I learned about Raymond Holbrook, it's that every gesture, every gift, every lesson came with a purpose. And if this briefcase was his final message, then I had no choice but to follow where it led. Even if it meant uncovering secrets buried deeper than the foundations of his empire. Even if it meant finding out that my father, the man I thought I'd spent my whole life trying not to become, might have been hiding something that could destroy everything my brother believed he'd inherited. And as I looked down at that letter one more time, a strange chill ran through me, because at the very bottom of the page, in faint smudged ink, was one last line I hadn't seen before. Open quote. Don't trust Harland. Close quote. The words blurred as my heart pounded in my chest. The lawyer who'd handled every deal, every document, the man who'd watched me open this briefcase with that unreadable expression. He knew. And suddenly, I wasn't sure if this inheritance was a gift or a warning. Because whatever was waiting in room 19, my father wanted me, and only me, to find it. And somewhere in that dark, silent motel, the truth about Raymond Holbrook, about who he really was waiting to be unlocked. It started with a photograph, a grainy image from 1976, the kind you only find buried in digital archives no one's touched for decades. A man, young and hungry looking, stands proudly in front of a weathered roadside motel. His hand rests on a leather briefcase, the same briefcase sitting on my kitchen table nearly 50 years later. The caption beneath the photo read, "Raymond Holbrook credits his success to never forgetting where he came from." But now, staring at that same briefcase, I realized something chilling. My father might have never wanted me to forget where he came from, but he'd done everything possible to make sure I never found out what that really meant. The official Holbrook Hospitality website painted him as a saint, entrepreneur, visionary, self-made man. The story was polished, perfect, and utterly sanitized. No mention of insurance sales, no mention of secrets, and certainly nothing about a locked briefcase with scorched hinges. That morning, I arrived at school at 6:30. The hallways were still dark, the smell of sawdust and machine oil hanging in the air from the shop wing. Jasmine Walker, my friend, my partner in problem solving, the school's resident mechanic and woodshop guru, was already there, goggles on, organizing drill bits. She looked up when she saw me. "That thing looks like it's been through a war." "Something like that," I said, setting the briefcase on her workbench. "The locks won't budge." She leaned closer, running her fingers over the metal latches. "These are quality German-made. Abuse brand, 1960s era. Your dad didn't cheap out, even back then." Her voice softened. "But the damage here, this isn't just rust. This is heat, like it was exposed to extreme temperature, maybe fire." My stomach turned. "Can you open them? Give me time," she said. "If we force it, we could destroy what's inside." For the next hour, Jasmine worked with surgical patients. Students started trickling in, peeking curiously through the workshop windows. She waved them off. "Read chapter 6, she told them, never taking her eyes off the lock. I paced, checked my phone. Another message from Sterling, a photo of him sitting behind Dad's old desk at the flagship hotel. The caption read, "Feels right." Typical. Then a sharp click. "Got it," Jasmine said. The sound of that lock opening echoed through the room like a gunshot. She worked on the second one, but it fought back, grinding, snapping, resisting like something that didn't want to be found. "Whatever happened to these locks?" she murmured. "Someone fused the internal mechanisms, like they wanted it sealed for good." When it finally gave, my hands were trembling. "You want privacy?" she asked. "No," I said quietly. "I might need a witness." The hinges creaked as I lifted the lid, the sound dry and ancient, like bones shifting in a coffin. Inside was an envelope, yellowed with age, my name written across it in my father's handwriting. Beneath it, wrapped in cloudy plastic, were stacks of documents. The letter was brief, only 3 lines. Open quote, Dexter, go to First National Bank, downtown branch, account 0037. Tell them you're picking up for Raymond. They'll know. Close quote. Jasmine frowned. That's cryptic. Dad wasn't cryptic, I said. He was the most straightforward man I've ever known. Maybe that's what he wanted everyone to think, she murmured. I didn't respond. I was too busy staring at the plastic-wrapped bundle, the faint outlines of typewritten pages, old photographs, signatures. I couldn't make out what they were, but something about them felt dangerous. I have to go, I said finally. To the bank? I nodded. It's the only thing he left me. Even if it's some final insult, I need to know. The next morning, I called in sick, something I'd done only twice in 10 years. Dr. Rodriguez, my principal, sounded surprised. Is everything all right, Dexter? Family emergency, I said. It wasn't a lie. Not really. The drive downtown took 40 minutes through rush hour traffic. I barely noticed the world passing by. My thoughts were trapped somewhere between curiosity and dread. First National Bank's original branch stood like a fortress from another era, a 1920s monument to money and permanence. Massive limestone pillars, brass doors so heavy I had to lean into them with my shoulder. Inside, the air smelled faintly of polish and time. The lobby stretched 3 stories high. Murals on the ceiling depicted Greek goddesses of commerce, agriculture, industry. The marble floor reflected everything, including the unease in my own face. I approached the counter. I'm here about account 037, I said to the teller. I'm picking up for Raymond Holbrook. She froze. Her eyes flicked to the screen, then to me. 1 moment, please. She picked up the phone, dialed 3 digits, whispered something I couldn't hear. Then she looked back at me. Someone will be right with you. Please have a seat. I waited. 5 minutes. 10. The world moved on around me. People cashing checks, depositing pay stubs, pretending their lives weren't about to change forever. Then a door marked private opened. A man stepped out, mid-60s, silver hair, a suit so immaculate it looked custom-made. Mr. Dexter Holbrook, he said with a smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. I'm William Thornley, branch president. We've been expecting you. Expecting me? Your father made arrangements. Please, follow me. He led me through a secure door, down a corridor lined with oil portraits of past presidents. Every face was stern, watchful, judgmental. Thornley used a key card on a brass-paneled elevator that looked original but hummed with modern precision. Your father opened account number 037 in 1974, he explained as we descended. Only 2 people were authorized to access it, himself and you, but not until after his death. 1974? I repeated. That was before he bought his first motel. Thornley nodded. Yes, a year before, in fact. When the elevator doors opened, the air changed. Cool, dry, faintly metallic. We stepped into a vast underground vault lined with safety deposit boxes, hundreds of them, glinting under fluorescent light. He led me to one in the corner, larger than the rest. Identification, please, he said softly. I handed him my driver's license. He studied it, nodded, then looked at the box. This requires 2 keys. I have the bank's. The other should be in your possession. I don't have a key. Thornley smiled faintly. Your father said you might say that. He told me to tell you, check the lining. The lining. The briefcase. I set it on the table, running my fingers along the inner edge. In the corner, under a flap of separated leather, I felt something cold. A small brass key. Tarnished but intact. Your father was a careful man, Thornley said. He understood that some things need to be protected, not just from theft, but from discovery. We inserted the keys together. The mechanism clicked open with the heavy, final sound of truth unlocking itself. Thornley pulled the box free, set it on the viewing table, and stepped back. I'll leave you to it. Take as much time as you need. Then he was gone. I was alone in the silence of the vault, surrounded by millions in secrets. The box was cold beneath my hands. I opened it slowly. Inside were stacks of bearer bonds, gold certificates, cash, old, crisp, some in foreign currency. I stared, dizzy. It had to be at least $3 million. But the money wasn't what stopped my breath. It was the folder beneath it. Manila. Heavy. I opened it and saw my own birth certificate. Only this one didn't list Raymond Holbrook as my father. It listed someone named Vincent Corvino. My pulse slammed in my ears. Who the hell was Vincent Corvino? The next page answered that question and changed everything I thought I knew. It was a newspaper clipping from the Chicago Tribune, dated March 15th, 1985. The headline read, "Federal Witness Dies in Car Explosion Outside Courthouse." The article described how businessman Vincent Corvino, a cooperating witness prepared to testify against the Torelli crime family's money laundering operation, had been killed when his car exploded in a courthouse parking garage. The blast was so precise that investigators believed it had been timed, designed to kill him and only him. The case collapsed. Without his testimony, 30 suspected mobsters walked free. My hands were shaking as I read on. The next photograph hit harder than the explosion ever could. It was my mother, young, radiant, maybe 25, standing between two men in front of a half-built motel. One was Raymond, my father, or so I'd thought. The other looked exactly like me. Same narrow face, same eyes, same slight curl to the hair. Vincent Corvino. He had his arm around my mother's waist. She was leaning into him, smiling in a way I had never seen her smile at Raymond. There were more photographs. Vincent and Raymond at ribbon cuttings, shaking hands over blueprints, a Christmas photo, Vincent holding a baby, me, the date on the back, December 1986. I would have been 10 months old. The documents beneath the photos were business contracts, typed, notarized, official. Corvino Holbrook Enterprises, Inc., formed in 1974. Vincent Corvino had provided the startup capital, $2 million in cash, to buy and renovate 3 motels. Raymond would manage them. Vincent would remain a silent partner. Profits were to be split 60-40, but one clause stood out, highlighted in fading blue ink. Open quote, "Upon the death of either partner, their shares shall transfer to their oldest male heir at the age of 40. If no male heir exists, the shares revert to the surviving partner." Close quote. Vincent had died in 1986. I was born in 1985. I was 38. In 2 years, 30% of Holbrook Hospitality would belong, legally, to me. Not Sterling. Not entirely. The final letter in the folder was handwritten, dated 3 weeks before Raymond's death. Open quote. "Dexter, if you're reading this, then you're standing in a bank vault learning that your life has been a carefully constructed lie, one designed to keep you alive. Your biological father was Vincent Corvino, my best friend and business partner. We met in 1973 when I was selling insurance. He was looking for legitimate investments for money I didn't ask too many questions about. Vincent wasn't a criminal, but he knew them. He grew up with them. He could never escape that gravity, no matter how hard he tried. When he met your mother in 1984, everything changed. They were happy. For 14 months, he was the happiest man I'd ever seen. Then the FBI came. They had him on tape, conversations with Anthony Torelli. They offered him a deal, testimony for immunity, protection for his family. He agreed. But the Torellis found out." Close quote. The letter stopped there. The rest of the page was blank, as if the story had been cut off mid-breath. Somewhere in that silence, I realized something terrifying. My entire life had been a cover story. My father's empire, my mother's distance, the briefcase, the secrecy, all of it was built around one truth, that I wasn't Raymond Holbrook's son. I was the son of the man he'd been forced to bury. And whatever the Torelli family had done to silence Vincent Corvino, they might not be done yet. Because if that clause in the contract still held, if I really was the rightful heir to 30% of the Holbrook empire, then my father hadn't just left me a legacy, he'd left me a target. And somewhere out there, someone else already knew, someone who'd been waiting 40 years for me to open that briefcase. Imagine finding out that the man you've called Dad your entire life wasn't your father at all. That everything you thought you knew about your family, every memory, every lesson, every harsh word, was part of an elaborate lie. Not to hurt you, but to save your life. That's what happened to Dexter Holbrook, a quiet high school chemistry teacher whose father built a multi-million-dollar hotel empire. But behind the polished marble and gold-plated nameplates lay a secret buried for nearly half a century, a secret locked inside a burned, battered briefcase. And when that lock finally clicked open, it didn't just reveal papers. It detonated a truth powerful enough to rewrite an entire life. The story begins with that briefcase, a relic from the 1970s. Scorched leather, melted corners, locks fused together like they'd survived a war. Dexter found it in his late father's storage room, tucked away behind boxes of old hotel ledgers and tax records. He didn't know what drew him to it. Maybe it was the smell of smoke clinging to the leather. Maybe it was the sense that this object had seen things. The Holbrook family's official story was simple. Raymond Holbrook, visionary entrepreneur, built his empire from a single roadside motel in Springfield. The company's website called him a man of integrity and determination. But the truth? The truth was hiding in plain sight, in a single photograph from 1976. Raymond, standing in front of his first motel, young, sharp, confident. In his hand, that same briefcase. The caption read, "Raymond Holbrook credits his success to never forgetting where he came from." No one mentioned what was in the briefcase. No one thought to ask, until now. The next morning, Dexter brought the briefcase to the school's metal shop. Jasmine, the kind of student who could disassemble a carburetor blindfolded, was already there. Goggles on, sleeves rolled up. "That thing looks like it's been through hell," she said, running a hand over the burned leather. "Something like that," Dexter replied. The locks wouldn't budge. German-made. A bus brand, 1960s. High quality, too good to break without destroying the case. Jasmine tilted it toward the light, studying the scorched metal. "This isn't just rust or age," she said softly. "This is heat damage, like it's been through a fire." She worked at it for an hour. Picks, oil, patience. The shop filled with the rhythmic click of metal against metal. When the first lock snapped open, the sound cut through the room like a gunshot. The second fought harder, grinding, screaming against the tools until it finally surrendered with a heavy, reluctant clack. Dexter's hands trembled as he lifted the lid. Inside was an envelope, yellowed with time. His name written across it in his father's handwriting. Beneath it, a stack of plastic-wrapped papers. The letter was short, 3 lines. "Dexter, go to First National Bank, downtown branch, account 0037. Tell them you're picking up for Raymond. They'll know." The next morning, Dexter called in sick, something he almost never did. He told his principal it was a family emergency, which for once wasn't entirely a lie. The First National Bank's downtown branch looked like something out of another century. Limestone walls, brass doors heavy enough to break bones. Inside, the marble floor gleamed under murals of Greek goddesses representing commerce and industry. He walked to the teller window, trying to steady his voice. "I'm here about account number 0037, he said. "I'm picking up for Raymond Holbrook." The teller froze, looked at her screen, then at him, then picked up the phone and whispered something he couldn't hear. Moments later, a man in a hand-tailored suit appeared. Silver hair, sharp eyes, the kind of confidence that came from running old money. "Mr. Holbrook," he said. "I'm William Thornley, branch president. We've been expecting you." Expecting him? Dexter hadn't even known about the account until yesterday. Thornley led him through a private door, past portraits of past bank presidents, into an elevator lined with dark wood and brass. "Your father opened account 0037 in 1974, Thornley said as the elevator descended. "He gave very specific instructions, access only to himself and you, but only after his death." 1974, a year before the first Holbrook motel. The elevator opened into a chilled basement lined with safety deposit boxes. The air smelled of metal and dust. Thornley stopped in front of one box, larger than the rest. "Do you have the key?" he asked. Dexter frowned. "No, I didn't even know there was a key." Thornley smiled faintly. "Your father said you might say that. He told me to tell you, check the lining." Dexter's stomach dropped. The briefcase. He tore at the inner lining until his fingers brushed something hard. A tiny brass key tarnished with age. He slid it free and held it up. Thornley nodded. Together they turned their keys. The box unlocked with a deep final click. Inside lay stacks of cash, bearer bonds, gold certificates, millions in untraceable assets. But beneath the money was something far more dangerous, a manila folder stuffed with old photographs and official documents. And the first thing Dexter saw when he opened it was his own birth certificate. Only one thing was wrong. Under father, it didn't say Raymond Holbrook. It said Vincent Corvino. Dexter's breath caught in his throat. Who the hell was Vincent Corvino? The next document answered that question in the worst possible way. A a newspaper clipping from 1985. Federal witness dies in car explosion outside courthouse. Vincent Corvino, a businessman ready to testify against the Torelli crime family, had been killed in a car bomb before he could take the stand. The FBI suspected the explosion was an assassination. The blast was so precise it killed no one else, meaning someone knew exactly when he'd be alone. Photographs followed. His mother, young, radiant, standing between two men, Raymond Holbrook and another man who looked exactly like Dexter. Same narrow face, same sharp eyes. Vincent Corvino. In one photo, Vincent's arm was around his mother's waist. In another, he was holding a baby boy. December 1986. Dexter, 10 months old. There were contracts too, typed on old IBM Selectric paper. Corvino Holbrook Enterprises Inc. were formed in 1974. Vincent had provided the startup capital, $2 million in cash for Raymond to launch the motel business. And buried deep in the legal language was one chilling clause. Upon the death of either partner, their shares shall transfer to their eldest male heir at age 40. Vincent's death in 1985 meant that when Dexter turned 40, he would inherit 30% of everything Raymond built. Sterling, Raymond's biological son, owned the rest, but Sterling didn't own all of it, and now he never would. Then came the final letter, handwritten, signed by Raymond Holbrook himself. It began, "Dexter, if you're reading this, then you're standing in a bank vault learning that your life has been a carefully constructed lie designed to keep you alive." He went on to explain it all. Vincent Corvino wasn't a criminal, but he was connected to dangerous people, the Torelli family, through business deals he tried to make legitimate. When the FBI approached him in 1985, he agreed to testify to protect his wife and son. But before he could enter witness protection, the Torellis found him. The explosion that killed him wasn't random. It was a message. Raymond wrote how Dexter's mother had come to him after Vincent's death, terrified and grieving, with a baby whose father's name had become a death sentence. Raymond had already married Sterling's mother. Together, they made a decision that would change everything. They would raise Dexter as Raymond's son. They would erase the name Corvino from history. Raymond even invented an affair, told people Dexter was the product of his mistake. It made the lie believable. It made Dexter's existence unremarkable, and most importantly, it made him invisible. "Every harsh word I spoke," the letter said, "every time I pushed you towards smallness instead of ambition, it was all to keep you safe." The Torellis would ignore a school teacher. They'd never ignore a hotel heir. Then, in one final line that broke Dexter's heart, "You were never my disappointment. You were my greatest success, because you lived." For 3 hours, Dexter sat alone in that vault, staring at the papers, the photos, the letter. Every memory of his father's cruelty now looked different. Every insult, every fight, every cold silence, protection disguised as rejection. He returned the documents to the box, except for the letter. That one he folded carefully and kept in his jacket. When Thornley reappeared, he asked, "Will you be removing the contents today, Mr. Holbrook?" Dexter shook his head. "Not yet." Your father said you might say that," Thornley replied. "The box is paid for 10 more years. It'll be waiting when you're ready." He drove straight to Uncle Harlan's office, the man who'd been Raymond's attorney since the beginning. "You knew," Dexter said, dropping the letter on his desk. "You knew everything." Harlan didn't even deny it. He removed his glasses, folded them neatly. "I drew up the contracts in '74, he said. "I stood as witness at Vincent's wedding. And yes, I knew who your real father was. Sterling doesn't." He never questioned what was convenient to believe. Then came the bombshell. "In 18 months, you'll turn 40. That's when you inherit the 30%, legally airtight. Sterling can't stop it. He can't buy you out for 10 years. You'll be his partner, whether he likes it or not." Dexter imagined the look on Sterling's face, the smug grin twisting into disbelief. If the empire he thought was his wasn't. And somewhere deep inside him, Dexter felt something ignite. Not greed. Not revenge. Something older. Something that had been waiting for decades. Back at school, Dexter returned to his normal life, explaining covalent bonds and chemical reactions to kids who'd never imagined their teacher sat on millions in hidden assets. Sterling's messages kept coming. Photos of him redecorating Dad's office, holding champagne, captioned, "Feels right." Dexter just replied, "Congrats, good for you." But the countdown had begun. 2 weeks later, Dexter flew to Florida. His mother was sitting by the pool reading a book about orchids. "You went to the bank," she said without looking up. "Why didn't you tell me?" "Because you're a terrible liar," she said softly. Just like your father. The FBI loved him for that." Then, her eyes filled with a kind of love that hurt to see. "You were born into danger, Dex. Raymond saved us. He gave you his name so you could live without fear. I couldn't love him the way I loved Vincent, but I respected him, and that had to be enough." Dexter didn't argue. He just nodded. Because for the first time, everything made sense. That briefcase now sits in his apartment. Restored. Polished. Inside it are photos of both men, one who gave him life and one who gave him safety. And in 18 months, when he turns 40, he'll walk into Sterling's boardroom. He'll hand over the papers Raymond and Vincent signed half a century ago. And when Sterling laughs, he'll show him the clause that changes everything. Because this isn't about money anymore. It's about truth. The empire everyone sees belongs to Sterling. But the truth, the blood, the legacy, the story, belongs to Dexter. And when that moment comes, when the two halves of his life finally collide, the explosion won't come from a car bomb. It'll come from a single man walking through a boardroom door, quiet, calm, and holding the truth like a weapon forged in silence. Because some inherit fortunes, some inherit lies, but the rare ones inherit both. And Dexter Holbrook? He's just waiting for the right chemical reaction, for the moment when everything that was hidden finally ignites.